finest oats in the square. Is this made with the lavender?
Finest in the city.
Fields yesterday. The scent is strong. That'll be 3 farthings for the large loaf.
Here you are. The crust looks perfect.
Keeps the cold out.
Can you imagine your life without things that seem absolutely basic? What if I told you that the foundations of our modern comforts and even survival were laid in an era we mistakenly considered dark? The Middle Ages were not only a time of knights and castles, but also a quiet laboratory where human ingenuity created life-saving tools. These inventions proved so successful that we use them every day without even noticing. They are not related to battles or kings, but they are what allowed civilization to move forward. This is a story about quiet heroes, engineers, monks, and craftsmen whose work changed the world. Watch the video to the end, and you'll learn how a simple bar of soap changed the course of history and why the simple rotation of a wheel literally fed entire civilizations.
How? Keep moving now.
I'm going to reveal the best-kept secret of medieval agriculture. It's not magic, but a piece of machinery that literally changed the landscape of Europe and fed millions. Before its invention, farming was a risky lottery. The old or light plow was nothing more than a pointed stick pulled by oxen. It only scratched the surface of the soil, which was acceptable for the light soils of the Mediterranean, but completely useless for the heavy, wet, and fertile clays of Northern Europe. These vast territories remained virtually untouched because people did not have the tools to cultivate them. The advent of the heavy-wheeled plow in the early Middle Ages was a true agricultural revolution, comparable in significance to the invention of the internet today. It was no longer just a tool, but a complex machine. It consisted of 3 key parts that worked in harmony. First, it had a vertical blade, or plowshare, which cut through the sod. Second, a horizontal plowshare cut the soil from below. Third, and most importantly, it had a mold board, a curved board that turned over the cut layer of soil. It was the mold board that changed the rules of the game. Instead of simply scratching the ground, the heavy plow cut into it, lifted it, and turned it over. Nutrients from the lower layers of the soil were brought to the surface, while weeds, on the contrary, ended up at the bottom where they rotted and fertilized the soil. Fields cultivated in this way yielded incomparably greater harvests. This was the first step toward creating food surpluses, which are the foundation of any civilization. The heavy plow was expensive and cumbersome. It required not 2 oxen, as for a light plow, but a team of 6 or even 8 oxen. Few peasants could afford to keep such a large number of draft animals on their own. This circumstance led to fundamental social changes. Peasants were forced to pool their animals and resources to work the land together. This laid the foundations for the medieval community, where survival depended on collective labor. In addition, the plow changed the very shape of the fields. The light plow required cross-plowing, which led to the creation of square fields. The heavy plow was very difficult to turn. Therefore, peasants began to form long and narrow plots of land known as strips. This landscape, still visible in some parts of Europe, is a direct legacy of this medieval invention. The cultivation of the heavy soils of Northern Europe led to a massive increase in grain production. For the first time in the history of this region, people were able to obtain stable food surpluses. This, in turn, led to population growth. It became possible to feed not only those who worked in the fields, but also craftsmen, merchants, and builders. Cities that had fallen into decline after the fall of Rome began to slowly revive, nourished by bread grown with the help of the new plow. This invention also contributed to the introduction of a 3-field crop rotation system, which was much more efficient than the old 2-field system. Now 1 field was sown with winter crops, the second with spring crops, and the third was left fallow. The heavy plow allowed the soil to be tilled deeply and thoroughly enough for this system to work. As a result, crop yields increased even more, and the risk of famine due to the failure of a single crop was reduced. The social consequences were no less profound. Ownership of a plow and a team of oxen became a status symbol. Society was clearly divided into those who had the resources to use the new technology and those who did not. This reinforced the feudal structure, but at the same time created a class of wealthy peasants who became the backbone of the medieval economy. The plow became not just a tool, but a factor shaping society. We are still reaping the benefits of this revolution today. Modern tractor plows, however complex they may seem, are direct descendants of that medieval design. The principle of the plowshare turning over a layer of soil remains unchanged. This proves that a truly ingenious solution does not become obsolete over the centuries. The heavy plow not only saved people from starvation, it laid the foundation for our prosperity. Today we take store shelves full of bread for granted, but behind this abundance lies a 1,000-year history of engineering thought that began in a medieval field. Every loaf of bread is a distant descendant of that very harvest, made possible by the plowshare and moldboard. We would love to hear your opinion. What modern invention do you think has changed our society as radically as the heavy plow did in its time? Write about it in the comments and be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new facts. Are you ready to learn the truth about how one simple thing kept wisdom alive? In a world without electric light, where all information was transmitted through handwritten texts, eyesight was the main tool of scholars, monks, and craftsmen. With age, when the eyes inevitably began to fail, a person became useless for their profession. A monk copyist could no longer copy sacred texts, and a jeweler could not see small details. It was a quiet tragedy that meant the loss of invaluable experience. The invention of eyeglasses, which occurred in Italy at the end of the 13th century, was one of the most underrated but important events in history. It was not a sensational discovery made by one person. Rather, it was the result of a long evolution of knowledge about optics, from Arab scientists to nameless Venetian glassmakers. The first eyeglasses were very simple. Two convex lenses fixed in a horn or wooden frame that was simply placed on the nose or held in the hand. These primitive devices were designed to correct farsightedness, a condition that almost inevitably develops in people over the age of 40. The lenses were convex. They collected light and brought the text closer, making it clear again. For the medieval world, where life expectancy was increasing and the role of the written word was enormous, this was of colossal importance. It was nothing less than a second youth for the eyes. The first to appreciate this invention were monks and scholars. In the scriptoria of monasteries, where books were copied day and night, glasses became a real salvation. They allowed experienced scribes and illustrators to continue their painstaking work for decades longer. This meant that the speed of preserving and copying knowledge increased dramatically. Without glasses, a huge number of ancient and medieval texts could have been lost forever, simply because there would have been no one to copy them. But the effect was not limited to monasteries. Glasses quickly spread among craftsmen whose work required high precision. Jewelers, watchmakers, engravers, and weavers were all able to continue their work, passing on decades of experience to their apprentices. The production of eyeglasses itself became a high art. Masters from Venice, especially from the island of Murano, were famous for the quality of their glass. They jealously guarded the secrets of making transparent and clear lenses, which were the basis of good eyeglasses. Other centers, such as Florence, specialized in the manufacture of elegant frames. Glasses became not only a tool, but also a status symbol, indicating the erudition and wealth of their owner. The spread of eyeglasses also stimulated further study of optics. People began experimenting with lenses of different curvatures and shapes. Although concave lenses for correcting nearsightedness would appear somewhat later, the very fact that vision could be corrected with glass was revolutionary. This laid the foundation for future inventions, such as the telescope and microscope, which would transform our understanding of the universe and life. We can only guess how many discoveries and works of art were created thanks to this invention. The scientist who was able to finish reading an important book, the artist who completed his masterpiece in his old age, the philosopher who recorded his last thoughts, all of them owed a debt to the nameless craftsman who joined two lenses together. Glasses became the silent engine of the Renaissance. giving humanity the ability to see further and more clearly. Today we take vision correction for granted, but it is worth remembering that this opportunity was given to us in the Middle Ages. Have you ever wondered how many priceless manuscripts and knowledge would have been lost if it weren't for these two simple pieces of glass? But what if I told you that the next invention allowed people not only to see better, but also to breathe better in their own homes? Read on to the next chapter to find out how the medieval home ceased to be a smoky trap. What I am about to show you literally changed the atmosphere of medieval life. For most of us, home is a place of warmth and comfort. But in the early Middle Ages, homes were smoky, dark, and not very comfortable places. The main problem was fire. An open hearth was located in the center of the main hall, and smoke escaped through a simple hole in the roof or through windows and doors. This meant that the room was constantly filled with acrid smoke. Living in such conditions was not just unpleasant. The smoke made it difficult to breathe, damaged belongings, and blackened the walls with soot. People put up with it because the alternative was to freeze. But around the 11th century, a solution began to appear in architecture that would change everyday life forever. That solution was the chimney. The idea was simple, not just to let the smoke out, but to direct it out of the room through a pipe. The first chimneys were large and clumsy. They consisted of a wide funnel above the fireplace, which was attached to the wall. The fireplace and chimney made it possible to move the hearth from the center of the room to the wall. This simple move had enormous consequences for the entire architecture and social structure. The house ceased to be one large smoke-filled hall. Once the smoke was tamed and vented outside, it became possible to build multi-story buildings. Previously, this was impossible because the upper floors would have been completely uninhabitable due to the smoke rising from below. Now it became possible to build a second and then a third floor, each with its own fireplace and chimney. Castles became taller and city houses became more compact. This invention gave rise to a concept that we cannot imagine our lives without: privacy. In the old single-room house, the whole family and servants lived, ate, and slept in one large room. With the advent of fireplaces and multi-story structures, it became possible to divide the space. Separate bedrooms, studies, and living rooms appeared. The owner of the house could retreat to his room by the warm fireplace, while life in the main hall continued. The nature of heat itself also changed. An open hearth in the center of the hall heated in all directions, but most of the heat escaped upward. A fireplace against the wall was less efficient in terms of overall heat transfer, but it created a concentrated zone of comfort. People began to gather around the fireplace, which became the social center of the home, a place for conversation and relaxation. It became a symbol of the hearth in the sense that we use the word today. The chimney also improved the hygiene of the home. The absence of smoke meant that walls and ceilings could be decorated. Tapestries, frescoes, and wood paneling appeared. Homes became not only warmer, but also more beautiful. People were able to store more things in their rooms: books, fabrics, furniture, without fear of them being ruined by soot. This contributed to the accumulation and preservation of material values. This was critical for survival in the cold climate of Northern Europe. Effective heating without the side effects of smoke made it easier for people to endure the long and harsh winters. This reduced discomfort and allowed people to go about their business indoors all year round. A warm home became not a luxury, but the norm for those who could afford a fireplace. Of course, the first chimneys were not perfect. They were often too wide, which led to a large loss of heat, or too narrow, which caused poor draft. But the technology itself was constantly improving. Bricklayers and builders gained experience, creating increasingly efficient designs. The advent of the chimney was a quiet revolution that made the home livable in the modern sense. Today we use central heating, but fireplaces and chimneys have not disappeared. They have gone from being a necessity to an element of luxury and comfort, but their basic technology remains the same. This medieval invention taught us how to control fire inside our homes, making them safe and comfortable. If you found this fact about the origins of our privacy interesting, please like this video and be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new videos about survival in the Middle Ages.
hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done.
What if everything you've been taught about the medieval rhythm of life is outdated? We are used to thinking of the Middle Ages as a time when life flowed slowly, obeying only sunrise and sunset. People oriented themselves by the sun, the crowing of roosters, and church bells ringing for prayer. But it was during this era that humanity's obsession with accurate time was born. Strangely enough, the reason for this was not trade, but religion. Life in monasteries was strictly regulated. Monks had to gather for prayer at strictly defined hours, day and night. Using a sundial for this purpose was inconvenient, especially at night or in cloudy weather. Water clocks, or clepsydras, were better, but they required constant maintenance in frozen winter. A reliable and constant mechanism was needed. Thus, at the end of the 13th century, one of the most complex and influential inventions of that era appeared: the mechanical clock. Its heart was the escapement mechanism. This ingenious device converted continuous motion, the fall of a weight, into intermittent motion, measuring equal intervals of time. The first clocks were huge, made of iron, and had neither a dial nor hands. Their sole purpose was to ring a bell at the right time, calling monks to service. These early mechanisms were inaccurate. They could be an hour slow or an hour fast per day, but the principle itself was revolutionary. For the first time in history, man had created artificial time, independent of natural cycles. Soon this technology spread beyond monasteries. The wealthy cities of Europe began to compete with each other, installing huge public clocks on the towers of town halls and cathedrals. This led to fundamental changes in thinking. The concept of punctuality was born. Whereas before, noon was a period of time, now it was the exact moment when the clock struck. Merchants could schedule meetings at a specific time, and employers could require their employees to arrive at work on time. Time literally turned into money. Mechanical clocks also gave impetus to the development of science and engineering. Their creation required in-depth knowledge of mechanics and metalworking. Watchmakers became some of the most respected and high-tech craftsmen of their time. They were pioneers in the creation of precision mechanisms, and their experience formed the basis for many future inventions, from scientific instruments to complex machines. The invention of the clock also changed how people perceived the universe. The world was increasingly compared to a complex clockwork mechanism created by a higher intelligence. This mechanistic view of the world became one of the foundations of the scientific revolution that took place several centuries later. It all started with a simple task: waking monks up on time for prayer. We still live in a world created by those first tower clocks. Our lives are divided into minutes and seconds. Our working days are scheduled by the hour, and we constantly look at our wristwatches or cell phones. This strict rhythm, this power of time over our lives, is a direct legacy of a medieval invention. Without mechanical clocks, there would be no modern industry, no global logistics, no scientific precision. They did not just help us survive, they created the structure within which we still live today, allowing humanity to synchronize its efforts on an unprecedented scale. Do you think our civilization would be as organized without this invention? In the next chapter, you will learn how humans harness the power of nature to do the hardest work.
The data should confirm the new calculations. Yes, the alignment is...
If mechanical clocks gave the Middle Ages time, then the water wheel gave it energy. This technology was not invented in the Middle Ages. It was already known to the Romans. However, it was during the Middle Ages that the water wheel went from being a curiosity to becoming the main engine of the economy, bringing about the first industrial revolution. The reason for this was a shortage of labor and the growing needs of society. Manual labor was inefficient for solving large-scale problems. The main and most obvious task that the mill solved was grinding grain. Before that, women spent hours grinding grain into flour using hand mills. It was hard and exhausting work. A water mill, powered by the force of the river, could grind as much grain in an hour as a person could grind in a day. This freed up a huge amount of human resources, primarily women, for other work. There were two main types of water wheels. The first was the undershot wheel. Its blades were lowered into the river and the current turned it. This type of wheel was simple to build but not very efficient. The second type, more complex but also more powerful, was the overshot wheel. Water was fed from above through a special chute and fell onto the blades, rotating the wheel not only by the force of the flow, but also by the weight of the water itself. Medieval engineers soon realized that this rotational energy could be used for more than just grinding grain. With the help of a system of shafts and cam mechanisms, they learned to use the water wheel for a variety of purposes. This was a real breakthrough. Fulling mills appeared, where heavy wooden hammers, driven by a wheel, fulled woolen fabric, making it dense and durable. Then the technology spread to metallurgy. Huge machines that fed air into blast furnaces were driven by water. This made it possible to reach higher temperatures and smelt more metal. Heavy blacksmith's hammers, also powered by water wheels, could process large pieces of iron, which was impossible to do by hand. This laid the foundation for tools, plows, and armor. Water wheels were even used in brewing, where they were used to crush malt, and in paper production, where they powered hammers that ground rags into paper pulp. In essence, any monotonous and labor-intensive work could be mechanized. Medieval Europe was covered with a network of tens of thousands of mills. They became as familiar a feature of the landscape as churches and castles. The water wheel was hugely important for survival. Stable flour production guaranteed bread, the staple of the diet. The mechanization of fabric production made clothing more affordable. The production of durable metal tools made the work of peasants and craftsmen easier. The water wheel was the heart of medieval industry, pumping energy into the economy. This dependence on water resources also shaped the geography of settlements. Villages and towns sought to be built near rivers in order to use their energy. The right to build a mill or use water often became a subject of dispute between feudal lords and monasteries. A mill was not just a machine, but a valuable economic asset that brought a stable income to its owner. Even windmills, which began to be actively built in places where there were no fast-flowing rivers, were based on the same principle: the use of free natural energy. This idea that the forces of nature could be harnessed to perform human work was one of the key ideas of the Middle Ages. It laid the foundation for all future industrialization. Guess how long it took to make the thread for a single shirt before this invention? In the medieval world, clothing was not a matter of fashion, but a matter of survival. In the harsh climate of Europe, warm wool and linen garments were essential. However, transforming raw materials, whether sheep's wool or flax fibers, into fabric was an incredibly labor-intensive process. The bottleneck in this chain was spinning. Until the 13th century, women had used a hand spindle for spinning for thousands of years. It was a simple tool, a stick with a weight. The spinner pulled the fibers and twisted them into a thread by rotating the spindle. The process was meditative but painfully slow. According to historians' estimates, it took several weeks of painstaking work to spin enough thread for a single simple shirt. By that time, looms were already quite productive. A weaver could process thread faster than spinners could produce it. Often, one weaver needed the work of 5 or even 10 spinners to provide him with raw materials. This imbalance held back all textile production. Clothing remained expensive, and most people had only 1 or 2 sets for all occasions. The invention of the spinning wheel, which probably came to Europe from the East, was a real breakthrough. The first spinning wheels were large and powered by hand. The spinner turned the large wheel with one hand and fed the fibers with the other. The wheel turned the spindle via a belt drive, but did so at a much faster speed than was possible with hand spinning. This simple improvement increased the spinner's productivity several times over. The process still required great skill, but now the thread was produced much faster. The bottleneck in textile production began to widen. There was more thread, it became cheaper, and therefore fabrics became more affordable. Later, a foot-powered spinning wheel appeared. This freed up both of the spinner's hands to work with the fiber, further increasing the speed and quality of spinning. The spinning wheel became an integral part of peasant and urban life. The whirring of the wheel became a familiar sound in many homes. The economic and social consequences were enormous. Textile production became one of the leading industries of the medieval economy, especially in regions such as Flanders and northern Italy. Affordable clothing allowed people to better protect themselves from the cold. Having several changes of linen underwear also had a positive effect on hygiene and comfort. The spinning wheel also changed the role of women in the economy. Spinning had been a women's occupation before, but now it became more productive. Women in villages and towns could spin thread for sale, contributing significantly to the family budget. This gave them a certain degree of economic independence. This meant a lot for survival. The ability to have warm and durable clothing was critical in a world without central heating. Woolen cloaks, sweaters, and blankets provided protection from the cold. Linen underwear was more hygienic. Without the spinning wheel, such mass production of clothing would have been unthinkable. Today we buy clothes in stores without thinking about how they are made. But modern spinning mills are just improved and automated descendants of that very medieval spinning wheel. The principle of twisting fibers into thread has remained unchanged. Could you imagine that such a simple thing was so important for survival? In the next chapter, we will talk about an item that is found in every home today, but was a symbol of purity in the Middle Ages. In our imagination, the Middle Ages are often associated with dirt. This is partly true, but it was during this era that a key step toward modern hygiene was taken: the invention of bar soap. Soap itself had been known for a long time. The Romans used a soft soap paste, often with an unpleasant smell, which was made from animal fat and ash, but it was more of a cleaning agent than a personal hygiene product. The real revolution took place in the Middle East, in cities such as Aleppo. Local craftsmen learned to make soap from olive oil instead of animal fat. They also added alkali obtained from sea plants to the cauldron. The result was a solid bar that was pleasant to look at and smell, lathered well, and did not spoil during storage. This was Aleppo soap, one of the first brands in history. With the Crusades and the development of trade, this technology made its way to Europe. First to Spain, where the famous Castile soap began to be produced from local olive oil, and then to Italy and France, where large soap factories also appeared in Marseille. European craftsmen adapted the recipe, but the essence remained the same: solid, plant-based soap. This new soap was not just a cleaning agent, it became a luxury and hygiene item. It could be used to wash not only the body, but also the hair, as well as to wash delicate fabrics. Unlike its predecessor, it had a pleasant smell, especially when herbs or aromatic oils were added to it. The use of such soap became a sign of status and civility. Gradually, soap became more and more affordable. Although it was still expensive for ordinary peasants, it became commonplace in cities. Bathhouses, which were popular in the Middle Ages, began to actively use bar soap. People began to understand that cleanliness was not only pleasant, but also beneficial. Although the direct link between hygiene and health was not yet fully understood, people intuitively strove for cleanliness. The availability of solid soap, which was easy to transport and store, contributed to the spread of hygienic practices. It could be taken on trips, did not spoil, and did not leak. Access to soap was an important factor for survival in crowded urban life, where any dirt could become a source of problems. Soap making became an important craft. It required knowledge of chemistry, albeit on an intuitive level. Master soap makers had to strictly observe the proportions of oil and alkali, control the temperature and cooking time. This technology was passed down from generation to generation, improving and accumulating secrets. This seemingly simple household item also had social significance. Cleanliness of the body and clothing became associated with moral purity. In chivalric novels and treatises on behavior, great attention was paid to cleanliness. Soap helped to maintain this ideal in practice. Today, a bar of soap is the most ordinary thing for us, costing mere pennies. We don't even think about how far this item has come. But it was in the Middle Ages that the transition was made from a greasy paste for washing to an elegant bar for personal hygiene. This transition was important not only for comfort. The gradual introduction of hygiene into everyday life became one of the pillars on which the survival and development of society was built. Bar soap was one of the first tools in this long struggle of man for cleanliness. At the end of the Middle Ages, around 1450, an event occurred that changed the world forever and became the crowning achievement of all previous inventions. Johannes Gutenberg, a German craftsman from Mainz, combined several existing technologies: the screw press, familiar to winemakers, indelible ink, and, most importantly, the idea of movable metal letters. This is how the printing press came into being. This invention became the main tool for the survival of all humanity, because it allowed not food or warmth to be preserved, but knowledge. Before Gutenberg, every book was handwritten. Monks and scribes spent months, even years, poring over a single copy. Books were incredibly expensive, comparable in price to a farm. Knowledge was accessible only to a tiny elite. A scribe's mistake could distort the text, and a fire in the library could destroy a unique work forever. The printing press changed all that. Now it was possible to cast hundreds of identical letters, type a page of text, and then print hundreds or thousands of identical copies. The cost of producing a single page fell hundreds of times. Books became accessible not only to monasteries and kings, but also to students, lawyers, merchants, and even wealthy artisans. It was an information revolution. Knowledge that had been locked away for centuries was now set free. Treatises on agriculture, based on generations of experience, could now be printed and distributed. Peasants could learn about new fertilization methods or three-field crop rotation not from hearsay, but from books. This was a direct path to increased yields and survival. Medical knowledge, which had previously been the preserve of a small circle of doctors, began to be replicated. Of course, medieval medicine was far from perfect, but the publication of the works of Hippocrates and Galen, as well as new observations, made it possible to standardize treatment. Herbalists and guides to caring for the sick became available in cities, helping people to combat ailments. Knowledge about other inventions we have discussed could now be preserved and disseminated. Blueprints for watermills, soap-making recipes, mechanical clock diagrams, all of this was recorded in books. An engineer from one country could learn from the experience of his colleague from another. This created a cumulative effect. Inventions began to appear more often because inventors could build on the work of their predecessors. The printing press made knowledge immortal. Even if 100 copies of a book were burned, hundreds of others would remain intact. Humanity no longer had to fear the dark ages when knowledge could be lost. Information became decentralized and virtually indestructible. This invention brought the Middle Ages to a close and opened the door to the modern age. It became the driving force behind the Reformation, the Age of Discovery, and the Scientific Revolution. All these great changes would have been impossible without a cheap and fast way to spread ideas. We conclude our immersion into the world of medieval technology. These inventions, from the heavy plow to the printing press, show that this era was not a time of stagnation, but one of intense and fruitful engineering thought. These people solved fundamental problems of survival: how to feed themselves, how to keep warm, how to preserve knowledge. We have examined only a small part of the legacy of the Middle Ages that still helps us live today. What do you think about these inventions? What other technologies of that era do you think deserve attention? Suggest topics for future videos you would like to see in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on new research.